Now, earlier today, I sat down with the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. We covered everything from local elections to his view on Vladimir Putin and when he last spoke to the White House and his future aspirations to be Prime Minister. Have a listen. Nigel Farage, thank you for joining us tonight on GB News. Huge concern about these tariffs. Were they avoidable?
Well, he said he'd put tariffs on. He was elected to do that. And, of course, he's put us in the lower tier, the lowest tier. Interestingly, EU 20%, UK 10%. By the way, I'm not pretending 10% is good.
No.
It's just less bad than it would have been without Brexit.
It's all down to you then, because you took
well,
the EU.
it's something that most of the commentariat can't really see.
Do we owe you a thank you then, Nigel Farage, for getting us out of the European Union and avoiding these tariffs 9 years later?
Well, but I think we should go much further than that. I can tell you this. I sat down face to face with Trump in 2017. He said, we want to do a deal with you guys. I want to show the world I believe in trade if it's fair, if it's right, if it's good for both sides. But of course, we didn't do a deal. Why? Because the Conservatives didn't take us out of the European Union. We went through the whole of 2017, 2018, 2019, and on it went. And by the time we'd finally left the European Union, frankly, it was all a bit too late. We did, however, do a lot of negotiation. 2/3 of a deal is there on the table. And it was really interesting to hear Jonathan Reynolds this morning. Because on the one hand, you've got Ursula von der Leyen of the European Union saying, we're going to retaliate. And Jonathan Reynolds saying, no, we're not going to retaliate. We're going to look to ways not just to erase tariffs, but to go further towards a trade deal. And it's very interesting for a Labour government, led by a Prime Minister who wanted a second referendum. They're now actually behaving a bit more like Brexiteers. Fascinating.
Using the powers that Brexit gave them, because it's on them.
Using the powers Brexit gave them on this, and also on foreign policy. When the reason, we can come to Ukraine, and I'm, by the way, very, very cautious about sending British troops on the ground in Ukraine for an undetermined period of time. But even acting as he's trying to do as the bridge between the European members of NATO and America, Brexit has benefited this Prime Minister.
Extraordinary, isn't it? Have you talked to the White House? Are they using you as a back channel? We thought that might happen when he came in, and right now be quite helpful.
What's really interesting is that in the first term, I spoke to the White House quite a lot. In this term, I haven't, because I can't be seen to interfere unless the government wants me to be useful or to be helpful. I have said many times, I don't just know the president, I know half the cabinet.
And you've told Keir Starmer that on the floor of the House. You offered it, playing privately.
I've done it many times. They're choosing to go their own route, and fine, perhaps they're better qualified than me to do it. I just think that, when it comes to the people holding the big key jobs in economics, I just happen to know these people, happen to be friendly with these people. Look, I repeat the offer. If the government wants me to help, I would help, and I would do it. Even though they're a Labour government, I'd do it in the national interest.
There's a 417-page list of products that could be tariffed at 10% proposed by the government this afternoon. What would your response be to where we are now? If you were Prime Minister now, how would you mitigate this hit on our industry?
You'd recognise that in the next week, that isn't going to change. But in the next month or two, it can change. Lots of reasons why. Number one, we are still the biggest foreign investor in America. America is the biggest foreign investor here. We don't trade with America at a massive surplus, unlike Germany and many other countries in the European Union. There are areas like financial services where, frankly, some simplification of the rules could benefit both sides. The biggest argument is over food. But frankly, if things are labelled properly and consumers have the choice, I don't see a massive problem there either, frankly.
That's chicken, and I like chlorinated chicken.
Yeah, but every bag of salad you buy in any supermarket, any pre-bag salad is chlorine washed anyway. And look, everyone goes apoplectic about chlorine washed chicken. Don't buy it. It's very easy.
Label it.
Yeah, it's very easy.
It's a labelling issue, really.
It's a labelling issue, it's a consumer choice issue, and a consumer knowledge issue.
On Ukraine, that's a big challenge faced. Putin is normally dominating discussion in Westminster, not today because of tariffs. What's your position on boots on the ground? Would you vote? There was a vote. We are told there's a vote.
I'm pretty annoyed that the Prime Minister is reverting to outright lies.
Well, that's a big thing to say.
No. Outright lies, saying that reform fawned over Putin. I've never heard such rubbish.
Well, that's your remark, saying he's
No. I said in one sentence 12 years ago that I respected him as a leader, but didn't like him as a person and wouldn't live in life.
Strong leader, you said, didn't you?
Yeah, well, there's no questions of what he is. That's why he's been there.
But that's fawning for them, isn't it?
It's almost as if there's no nuance of any kind allowed. You know, has Putin been a successful Russian politician? Well, up until the invasion of Ukraine, arguably yes. I've never liked the guy. We deplore the invasion. The fact the Prime Minister is sinking to these depths, I think shows you, despite what's happening on the international stage, domestically, this government's become very unpopular very, very quickly. And my nervousness is this. Back in the early 1950s, there was a settlement to end the Korean War. Korea divided north and south with the divide, and the Americans, us to some extent, but the Americans said they'd put an army in to maintain the peace. 72 years later, there are still 24,000 American troops in Korea. We went into Afghanistan in 2001. Little did we know we'd be there for 20 years. The British Army has been diminished since 2010. It's the smallest it's been for centuries. For every one man in the front line or woman, you need two behind, reserves, etc. So one, I'm worried the army isn't big enough. And two, I want the Prime Minister to tell me, if we send troops in, for how long? And what's the objective?
Just briefly, other areas too. Chagos Islands, that deal has now been approved by the White House, we think, from government source.
Yeah, I mean, the reason the Americans have approved it is because we've said to them, don't worry, guys, we'll pay for all of it. The Americans will not contribute a penny.
And that bill is how much again?
So nobody tells the truth on this because nobody understands simple arithmetic. The deal of 90 million a year for 99 years, that's pretty much uncontested, right? Even government doesn't fight back against that. 90 million pounds a year for 99 years linked to inflation. If inflation runs at 3%, and given the way compounding works, that would be a repayment of 52 billion pounds. And frankly, right now, well, when you've taken away the winter fuel allowance, when you're threatening family farms, when the economy and the borrowing figures are in dire trouble, and when you're promising to increase the size of defence spending, yes, why risk this money?
And it's hard to sell, I think, when that figure, they do challenge 90 million a year. We'll see where that ends up, but it'll be a lot of...
Well, I think everyone accepts it's 9 billion.
You're standing in every seat in the country. That's a significant step forward for your young party. You're now ahead in the polls. Electoral calculus say you'll be the biggest party after the election. Do you want to be Prime Minister? Is that...
Well, I'm immensely proud of taking this party from the 5th of July, from yes, millions of votes and just a handful of members of parliament. I'm immensely proud we've set up 400 branches. I'm immensely proud that our membership has gone from early June, less than 30,000 to now 221,000. And I'm immensely proud that, 1,640 candidates are going into the field with a full slate for these elections. It has been my biggest goal since the general election to get this party ready to fight elections on a big scale. So I'm immensely proud of that. I make no bones about it. The 1st of May is important to us. We're pretty gutted that Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, Sussex,
no elections there,
have been cancelled because they were potentially, on paper, our strongest areas. So no, May the 1st matters to us enormously.
And those numbers, no wrong ones in there, often get caught out by...
Look, all I can promise you is that
they've been fully vetted.
We have vetted our candidates to a higher level and a higher standard than any party has ever done before for local elections.
Obviously, you're a young party. You've been in charge for 8 months, 9 months, but you do lack a structure. You have 4 MPs now in the Commons, but who is your Treasury spokesman? Who's your Home Affairs spokesman? I mean, Rupert Lowe has now left, but he had a point, didn't he, about the lack of structure, organisation.
Well, he never joined, actually. Oddly, he never joined. He stood for us without even being a member. I found that out recently, which is odd.
But he's right on the issue of structure.
Structure, we had to do.
You purport to be a party for next government.
You are comparing us with parties that have been around for 130 years or 200 years, right? We are a very, very much an infant in terms of time. First things first is to build a party structure. to be able
From the grassroots up.
from the grassroots up, which is why I'm touring the country. This will be, I think, my last day in London until May the 2nd. So building a structure, building a party, getting candidates out fighting elections, they come before having a Treasury spokesman, a health spokesman. Do we have to do all of those things? Yes. And one of the next steps of our development will be after May the 1st, during the summer, we'll get a party board in place with elected representation. We are cramming years of evolution into a very short time frame.
And you want to be PM yourself, don't you? You campaign against all your life.
Do you know what? The reason I came back out of political retirement last year, partly frustration that Brexit wasn't being delivered anything like I thought it should be, but chiefly because I genuinely believe that we are in a cycle of economic decline, of societal decline, of cultural decline, which if it's not turned around in the space of a few short years, this country will literally be unrecognisable to all of us.
So you can imagine yourself going to the door of number 10.
So let me finish.
Yep.
I see myself right at the moment to be the right person to lead a completely new political movement, if you like, a political revolution. And I believe right now I am the best person to do that. If somebody younger and better looking comes along who's more capable than me, do you know what? I'll recognise.
But you want to be PM, do you?
No, you misunderstand me.
Yeah.
You fundamentally misunderstand me. There are two types of people in politics. Those who want to be something, namely aspiring to rank and position.
Yes.
And those who want to do something. I want to turn this country around. Everything from the education system through to attitudes towards work, borders, culture, you name it. I want to turn this country around. That's why I'm sitting here talking to you right now. At the minute, I believe I'm the best person to do that.
Even on issues, there's some confusion about you want to bring in new green taxes. There are reports the weekend of a major campaign to counter house building. Is that right? Is that part of policy think tank?
No, we have to build houses.
Yes, you're pro house building.
We have to build houses. The population's exploding. We have to build houses.
Yes. And the rape gangs, the Tories are leading the way on them all now. I know you've been pushing very hard.
Rape gangs, they covered it up whilst they were in power.
And now they're pushing for a national inquiry with the votes in the House of Commons. Rupert Lowe's got a privately funded one.
No. Look, we took a private prosecution out against the Manchester attackers on the basis of two-tier justice. It worked. CPS then acted. I challenged the government to hold a national inquiry into the rape gangs. They responded by giving us 5 separate inquiries. There's no point me holding an inquiry into this or Rupert Lowe holding an inquiry into this unless it has statutory powers. Yes, of course, the rape victims need to be heard. But what is shocking about this isn't just the abuse of the young women, it's the extent of the cover-up. And without statutory powers, we ain't going to get there. So yes, the Tories are playing catch-up with us on virtually everything, having themselves in office done the opposite. And what they don't understand is that the breach of trust with them, with about half their voters from 2019, is so great, it isn't going to return.
And just finally, going back to this polling, do you think you've topped out? Can you go higher into the 30s? You're kind of mid-20s now, aren't you, with the other 3 parties? Is it have you gone as far as you can go? And
you know what? The progress we made is unbelievable. And it's why May the 1st matters so much. If people in elections think that if you vote reform, you get reform. If people start to think that in very large numbers, in big geographical areas in Britain, we'll go a lot higher.
Nigel Farage, thank you for joining us today on GB News.
Thank you.
In your HQ.
Well, there we have Nigel Farage. And I should clarify, of course, there are charges against those individuals named there or talked about there by Nigel Farage in Manchester.